Well, you see, Willard, this war, things get confused out there. Because there's a conflict in every human heart between the rational and the irrational, between good and evil. And good does not always triumph.
How do you best introduce a movie that you made 40 years ago and that took 2 or 3 years of your life and that was incredibly difficult? Hi, I'm Francis Coppola, and that's exactly what's going to happen to me. When the film was released in 1979, I think, it was, of course, deemed, as films usually are, as being too long. And it was indeed, for a war film, quite different, quite surreal, and maybe even to some people a little weird. Years later, the film didn't really seem that it was so weird or unusual, and indeed perhaps even it was very appropriate because that war, the Vietnamese War, was itself very surreal and very different from what we had experienced in other wars. And so in the first version, made in 1979, we trimmed it down as short as we could and tried to make it as not weird as we possibly could. Years later, when I looked at it, I realized that it was just a little ahead of its time. It wasn't at all weird. In fact, as often happens with art, the avant-garde art of the past becomes the wallpaper of the future. In other words, stuff that's considered strange and advanced becomes absorbed in the culture and becomes extremely contemporary. And that's what happened with Apocalypse.
See how they break both ways? One guy can break right, one left simultaneous. What do you think of that?
Bill, I think we gotta wait for the tide to come up.
Hey, Lance, come here, look.
And so we made another version in which we put absolutely everything back. Not only repaired some of the, what I felt in 1979 were just annoying cuts just to make it shorter.
Lieutenant, find that tree line back about 100 yards. Give us some room to breathe. Yes, sir.
We restored all that, but we also put in major sequences and other sequences that were shot but were not included. And we put it all together and showed it, and it was long, but people liked it, and it was released as Apocalypse Now Redux. But now I'm approached, and we're going to honor this film on its 40th anniversary. And they said, well, which version do you want to show? Do you want to show the 1979 first shorter version, or do you want to show the Apocalypse Redux version? And I thought about it, and I realized, well, I want to make a version that I liked. And my version, of course, repaired all those little annoying cuts that were made, as in Redux, and did put back some major sequences, but not all of them. Put back the ones I thought were relevant. And thus there was a new version. It was sort of longer than the 1979 version, but shorter than Apocalypse Redux. And it's the one I recommend to you, and the one that is my favorite. We call it Apocalypse Now Final Cut. I am very pleased, and I'm enthusiastic about the version, also because in these modern times, sound and color reproduction and the real effects of low frequencies giving you the visceral feeling of an explosion. When one of those enormous explosions took place, you didn't hear it, you felt it, and then you heard it. We worked so hard with our collaborators, with Dolby, with Meyer Sound, and with our technical laboratory, working with wonderful artists who are using state-of-the-art techniques such as roundabout. I think Apocalypse Now looks better than it ever looked and sounds better than it ever sounded. So I invite you to enjoy this movie. It is the one that I'm looking forward to seeing, Apocalypse Now Final Cut. Thank you.